Hey everyone, welcome back. This week's Open Artist Spotlight features a Puerto Rican Filipino Bronx native who travels the world to find inspiration for his poetry. His book, Ways of Being, captures his experience as he travels the world to find the learnings of love, joy, resistance, and himself. Joining us to tell us more, we welcome author and poet Miguel Rodriguez. Well,
Hey,
hello, hopeless romantic Miguel Rodriguez.
how's it going?
I'm good. As good as can be during
I hear
these
that.
particular times, and that was just something refreshing for me, right? Because when I think of you, and I think of your writing, I think of you traveling, and I think of
Hmm.
you exploring, and I think of you really stepping outside of what we are raised in as an environment to really get the sense of who you are as a human being, which is
Hmm.
what's being challenged right now during this pandemic and the protests. And
Right.
so just share a little bit about like where you are now having these restrictions.
Yeah. I think that, it's interesting about the journey we call life. I think that there are multiple stops on this journey, and this is just one of those stops. And this stop might be a little bit longer than we expected, and it might have a couple of different layers. Right now, I've just been utilizing this time to sort of hone in on my skills as a poet, but also just being very active and being a part of the many demonstrations happening in New York City, especially demonstrations in the Bronx. And then just being okay with that, being okay with like certain parts of my life stopping, and certain parts of my life changing, and just like living day to day with those things.
So how many demonstrations have you participated in?
I participated in four. Well, technically, if I started on one day and it went past midnight, that counts as 2 days. But
Got
I
it,
did
got
about
it.
four. Two in Brooklyn, one in Manhattan, and one in the Bronx.
You weren't part of that Bloody Thursday protest, were you?
I was there. I was physically there.
Oh my gosh. What was that like?
You know, it's such a weird duality, because apparently on my Facebook, I had there was like a sergeant from the NYPD who was in charge, I guess, of like in making sure people were safe that night. And many of my friends were arrested and pepper sprayed, and like videos of people being pushed to the ground. I mean, I've seen everything from a pregnant woman getting punched in the face
Oh my
to like
gosh.
to yeah, and it's a very, as a therapist, it's a very traumatic experience to see members of your community being physically harmed. And I say that both for the folks who live there and both for the folks who work there. And I'm talking about officers of the NYPD as well. And I think that it's a very toxic space to be in, where the identity of black and brown people has been so broken down and so pulled apart that when folks do stand up and speak and fight is seen as violent, when it's like, no, like this is me trying to like be myself in my community and express what I need, you know.
Yeah, I feel you. I feel you. And then there's also the New York way of being, right? Because New Yorkers have a tendency to be a little aggressive, for lack of a better word. I'm a New Yorker, born and bred, and it's sometimes we're identified as such, which can be misconstrued in behavior patterns, right? And so there's this automatic defense. But from what I understand, on that particular day, there was a lot of misunderstandings and entrapment. That's the word that keeps coming up for me.
Yeah, folks were kettled. That it's a tactic that's used where, folks are surrounded. And there were many different tactics. They were closing train stations way before curfew, not letting folks leave the area. So if you didn't live in the Bronx in that immediate area, you were basically trapped there for some time. And it's nothing new. This isn't a tactic that we just saw that Thursday. This has been happening for a very long time. Like talking about, multiple decades ago up until this point.
And so
And
how were you able to get away? Like how were you able to salvage yourself? Because from what I understand, a lot of people just were entrapped. They were
yeah,
trapped.
I think that Well, it all depends on what the roles of individuals were. Like most people think demonstrations happen and people show up and like, all right, I'm gonna march. Like there, as a community organizer, we are strategic in making sure that there are different roles for folks. So folks might be doing mutual aid, folks might be doing jail support. So if you're doing jail support, the goal is to not also be in jail. The goal is to support people who are like coming out of jail. And so my role was just different that day. My role was different that day. The same time it was different. I was actually a part of the demonstrations where the mayor's daughter was arrested. I was in that group.
Right.
And so my role that day was different from the role that I played on Thursday.
And just so as a brown person, right? Because I know we wanted to talk about your book, but this is, these are the times we're living in, and these are the conversations that are just being had that I think people need to be a part of. And the fact that you identify as a person, I understand that you're developing a new book and that you're going to be sharing a poem with us for the first time.
Yes.
So just give us a background on it, and then I'll do a nice little introduction to share with our viewers.
Well, I think about this. Growing up in school, there were different tables, and depending on the table you sat in, that was your identity. And I think it's a part of white supremacy culture to tell folks, especially folks of color, that you're either one thing or the other. When in fact, part of dismantling that culture is being both and, right? Like I can both be a therapist and watch Dragon Ball Z. I can both be a community organizer and love Sailor Moon and love organic gummy bears and want to shop at Whole Foods because it's better for my body, but also understand that as an institution, it's a part of gentrification. And so a lot of both and.
All right. So here we have Miguel Rodriguez, who's going to read from his, well, actually, he's not going to read because the book hasn't been published yet. This is his second book, and we're getting a taste of it. Let's give it up for him. He's going to recite, and honestly, would you judge me?
And honestly, would you judge me? If I said I liked playing video games way more than I should, would you judge me? If I said I create sim characters that mimic the life choices I was too afraid to make, would you judge me? I still practice wrestling moves when I'm alone. I'm convinced one day I'll win a fight with a chokeslam. I'm sure my socks tell stories about which of them are my favorites, while I'm secretly screaming to be noticed by someone other than my reflection and the people asking me for money as I walk by them with really cool socks. If I said I learned how to tie bow ties as an excuse to never use the fake ones given back to me as gifts, if I said I hop the train every chance I get, if I said I'm a therapist who needs a therapist, would you judge me? If I said I can make the best baked macaroni and cheese your mother ever tried, if I said I love washing dishes and somehow I'll publish an article highlighting how washing dishes is exactly how God made us and how he speaks to us with streams of running water and a little soap, I tend to shine better. If I said I intentionally cross the street when I see a dog, I'm not afraid, I'm just allergic to dogs. If I said I pick my nose in public and I don't care who sees me, if I said people watch me more than I should and I'm afraid of falling asleep on the train because I'll end up on someone else's Snapchat or worse, missing my stop, would you judge me? If I said I dream what it will be like to make my wife breakfast, go shopping and have her pick things out for me to pay for, if I said I haven't mastered the ability to not come off as self-centered, I'm just really good at talking about myself, would you judge me? Which is why I talk to myself. Like I have no one else to speak to other than the voice in my head. When the voice of my heart is sleep, I cheat on it with the voice of my past. If I said I have degrees in things I've made up in my mind, like an associate's degree of compassion, a bachelor's degree of self-care, a master's degree in anxiety attacks, I tell myself one day I'll earn a PhD in love, but I'm too afraid of how long it will take to publish something good, worth reading, worth being. Would you judge me?
Woo! I'm about to call you Dr. Miguel Rodriguez.
You should, because I'm doing my dissertation. I'm actually a doctoral student, so I'll be Dr. Miguel Rodriguez in a couple of years.
There you go. Congratulations. Good luck with that. And you guys, for more on Miguel Rodriguez and his poetry book, The Ways of Being, check out his website, timewithmiguel.com. And you can check him out on IG at miraculous_hope. That is our show today, mi gente. Thanks to all our guests for coming through and to you for tuning in. If you missed any part of the show, you can check out the Recablecast tonight, 24 hours a day at bronxnet.tv. I'm Rhina Valentin. May the universe provide paz, prosperity, y amor, power to the people.